Saints Row 4 was, without equal, the most fun moment-by-moment gameplay I have experienced in my entire life. It started when I walked in on my friend skydiving through the center of an alien spacecraft, dodging lasers to the tune of epic rock music as the computer dares him through a mission title to be a badass. That was right before the final combat. Before that point, I only understood crime boss simulators to be something I never wanted to play. They did not interest me in the slightest. But having seen that part of it, I definitely wanted to play it. And so my friend actually bought me a copy and I started playing it and I was hooked from the start. So here's my recollection of the story. Now remember, I didn't play the other games first. I actually played the fourth game first and played games 3 and 2 in that order afterwards. So I wasn't familiar with any of the characters. But you start out in the White House. No, you start out on a mission to stop a terrorist. You establish yourself through a cutscene as being badass and unwilling to listen to orders. You fight off these terrorists, but the last terrorist gets away and you run after him, and then you use a quick time event to crash into him and try to stop him, but he knocks you on your ass, and then you shoot him just as he hits a button to start a nuke launch, and he falls into this acid bath. The nuke is going off, there's nothing you can do, you have to get out of there, but instead of getting out of there, you run full tilt towards the nuke, and you jump onto it just as it's launching off, and you climb up it as your team is telling you through the radio how much they admire you and they're going to miss you, and you climb up via QuickTime events and slowly disable it, and when it's finally disabled, you let go of the nuke, fall through the sky, it blows up in the background, you give a thumbs up to the camera and crash landing through the White House roof into the president's chair. Having decided that you survived, you put your feet up and appreciate the fact that you're there. This act of saving the world, I guess, lands you enough public applause that you become elected president. Well, you haven't been president very long before you've totally tanked the country, and you're not willing to take responsibility for the fact that you're a crappy president. But that's when aliens attack. Your friends are just trying to warn you that aliens are going to attack when they attack, so it's kind of a little bit late. But luckily, you have armed the White House to the teeth. There are guns behind so many panels in this White House. You grab a few, take out some aliens, watch them kidnap your friends, go out on the front lawn of the White House, go, oh crap, there's aliens attacking, talk into your wristwatch communication device, and tell them through Sesame Street code, I love this, that they need to put the defenses up. So you slide down the banister to this giant array of weapons, sit in the seat, and just take out all of these ships, which are flying all over your lawn. And meanwhile, you're spouting one-liners and trying to take them all out. They get into a Space Invaders formation. And once you've taken them all out, this one big one comes by and blows up, I forget the name of that giant phallic imagery, but they blow it up and you get really mad at them, so you try to blow them up and you manage to crash the ship. Then you crash yourself through their windshield and find the big bad alien, who naturally grabs you by the throat as you come in and slams you against a table, and he says, why do humans enjoy jumping so much? You tell him to get off your lawn. You then have a little boss battle, which is unwinnable, but you give it your all, proving that you're not intimidated by anything, and he slams you to the ground with telekinetic force and goes, oh boy, I'm going to have fun toying with you. When you wake up, you are in the Matrix, but you don't quite realize it right away. You're in like this 50s domestic Leave It to Beaver setup in weird clothes, and you walk funny, and everybody treats you all nice and happy and chirpy, and it's like the exact opposite of the completely unwholesome world that you come from. So it doesn't take you long to realize you can't even swear, but everybody's congratulating you on becoming mayor, I guess, or president, and you realize at some point through a little glitch that these are actually aliens, and then you decide to run off because they're sort of threatening you, and you get into a car and you manage to crash through a bunch of things, and your friend Kenzie contacts you to say you're stuck in the Matrix, she's trying to get you out, just take this gun and blow things up, which is all you wanted to hear. So you take a gun and blow things up, and pretty soon she gives you a bigger gun, so you are actually blowing things up with rockets, and then the sheriff comes in and attacks you and you defeat him, and the big boss guy comes in just then and say, whoa, you're messing up my stuff. Don't do it again or I'm going to blow up the earth. Then he throws you into a recreation of the world that you experienced in, I assume, previous games. I assumed at that point that they were previous games. And the only difference is that the Saints are not on top of the world like they had been. So you start going through this world trying to figure out what you can do. And it turns out you have to start from scratch, buy all your weapons, buy costumes. Costumes are a big thing. My friend calls it playing Pretty Princess. And it's so much fun to put your own personal personality and character into this character. I mean, you get to design them to begin with. You get to design them at the start, right before you become president, to see, what your character looks like. But here you get to design what their clothing looks like, and it's awesome! And it's not long after you start this that you realize that there's bits of code lying around that you can pick up and Kinsey can analyze. And the code gives you superpowers within the Matrix. All of the cool things that you can do that you could never do in real life, like being able to jump and fly and run, shoot all of these awesome elemental powers, and grab people and throw them through the air and stomp on the ground and make them all fall down. So you're running around, jumping from roof to roof, trying to find all of the little bits of code to give you all of the awesome powers and all the power upgrades. Meanwhile, you're trying to track down, or at least Kinsey's trying to track down, where your friends are hidden. But as Kinsey's trying to do that, you get hit with these mini bosses who you have to hit them with your special powers to cancel their shield abilities, and then you hit them in the face with a shotgun, which is the weapon of choice for up close and personal and does the most damage. But that means getting close to the enemies, and the best way to fight them is to kite them. So it was quite the learning experience for me just trying to battle those bosses. The boss bad guy alien has put everybody in their own personal nightmares. So you find them in the places that make them feel the worst, and you rescue them one at a time from homages to other games. And I don't even know all of the games. I'm not familiar with them. So it was interesting stuff. I knew a little bit. At first you think you're going to rescue your friend who died, who was like your best buddy and even a bigger badass than you are. But it turns out that instead you rescue your friend Shandi, who was just devastated by the guy's death and completely changed personality. So much so that the second half of her rescue mission is actually breaking her in half and having the fun Shandi and the serious Shandi. So you have both of them on your team. One of them is just part of the Matrix, I guess. And then you rescue Pierce, your wisecracking sidekick, and he's being attacked by a giant mascot, kind of like Ghostbusters style. And you rescue Matt, the hacker guy who was your enemy before, and everybody seems to hate him. I really took to him after a while because the stuff he spouts during fights amounts to, oh wow, I can't believe you're competent. Look how competent you are. And since I have a competency problem with games, that was incredibly empowering to me, so I loved having him on missions. But he was trapped in some Tron or some older style games, including text adventures, and you finally got him out by giving him a pep talk. There's a new gal who was not in previous games, but she's a soldier lady, kind of like Ziva from NCIS. She's trapped fighting an evil, villainous, goatee-bearing clone of you. So you fight him off together and rescue her. There's a robot character named Sid, who's just this big floating ball. Eventually, you get him a body and put him in a big floating ball, kind of like Wheatley from Portal. He's actually really an alien who the big bad alien had fought and managed to banish him to the Matrix or something. So you finally found him a body again. And his name is Sid, which I think at some point they actually point out an homage to Final Fantasy with that name. And then there's two people who I always mixed up. One of them is based on a voice actor. I think that's Keith David. And then there's Ben Kingsley, who is the boss of the group that you started with in the first game, which I have never played. He was your boss to begin with when you joined the gang, and now he works for you. And there's a bit of a rivalry going on there, but it's not too heated. There's even power-up missions for all of the characters. Like when you power up the Shandis, you go through this awesome drug trip. And it is like the one major censored bit in the game, but I found it very amusing. An interesting use of graphics. And there's also a place where you're fighting off guys and you have to track them down through a club, and you get the urge to get up on the stage and dance. So whether you're a male or female character, you get up on stage and shake your booty in very revealing clothing. And you do it so much that you're oblivious to the fact that the person you're chasing actually saw that you were on stage, rolled their eyes at you, and ran off. At some point, the Matrix starts attacking you with all of these bad guys based on stuff in the previous games, and that's kind of how the Matrix is fighting back against your power. It's kind of like an homage to everything that happened previously in the series, most of which I didn't get while playing this game, but which I appreciated a little bit later, because I wanted to play the earlier games in order to enjoy and appreciate where these references were coming from. Eventually, you actually track down the spot where your friend Johnny Cash Johnny Gat is being held, and you actually free him from his prison, which is an homage to the games like this side-scrolling beat-em-ups, Double Dragon, and it has some of the awesomest graphics, and I love it because I'm a retro gamer. So much good music and just fun callbacks to old games, awesome games. And I totally forgot the part where you come out of the Matrix. This portal sets you free, and you wake up inside this globe full of orange liquid, which serves the purpose of obscuring your naughty bits, because you're naked from that point on as you get through the alien ship trying to find the spot where Kinsey will pick you up in this spaceship, and you beat up an alien who just should have shot you, honestly. You steal his weapon, you make it through a whole bunch of other aliens by shooting them with their own weapons, end up on this ledge with all of these aliens coming after you, and you've just heard a radio broadcast to the tune of, oh, we're going to execute all of the Earth's leaders for a fun party. And then as you're holding off all of these oncoming bad guys, and it looks like you're going to die, the alien leader villain comes on and he says, oh, by the way, you should really stand down. I see that you're being very brave, but just surrender. It's not worth it. And I'm sure that you're really going to surrender after hearing he's going to execute you. Because yeah. But then Kinsey comes up and says, get down, boss, and shoots them all with the giant spaceship she's managed to catch. And then we come to the spot which I call, Kinsey, why the hell did you let me drive? Wherein, in a cutscene, you shoulder Kinsey out of the way and say, I'm driving this thing you have never seen before, and you have no ability to drive a spacecraft whatsoever. And then you pilot it through the bowels of the ship to try and escape. And I died so many times in that section. It was just insane. Vehicle sections are actually the part I do worst at on these games. I once got stuck as I was trying to escape from bad guys on a motorcycle. I was stuck doing circles the whole time. I couldn't figure out how to make it stop. But eventually you get out, and then you're off on your own in this little ship which becomes your base, and you're getting ready to go back to Earth when the big boss blows Earth up. And you're like, what? You villain! As if you weren't villainous enough! And he's like, oh, well, I did say that I'd do that. You know, you really should have surrendered. It's all your fault. I'm like, no, you're keeping my friends in their own personal nightmares. You think I'm going to back down and let that happen? So you decide, well, there's nothing else you can do but try to get revenge. So that sets you on the path to defeating the villain because there's nothing else you can do. You do the same sort of criminal behavior that you did in the previous games, but everything that you're doing now is just some simulation that allows you to break up the Matrix a bit, and through those breaks allow Kinsey to find out where the big boss is in the actual ship, where the defenses are, so she can shut them down. Well, having rescued all your friends and beefed them up, including a big vampire romance novel based power-up mission for Matt, which was one of my favorites except for the driving parts, you find your way to the part of the Matrix that lets you tinker with the whole simulation and bring it crashing down. At the very end, you get this one mission which I found really difficult because your teammates sort of abandon you halfway through it, and there's all of these rolling robot monster things that are very difficult to hit because you have to hit them in the back and they keep turning, which is why the teammates are nice, because if they're distracting the monster you can hit it in the back, but once they disappear you can't do that anymore. But you're going over with groups trying to destroy different key spots of the Matrix, and you end up actually having some of the villains reprogrammed to help you for this spot, like the giant mascot. That section had one of the best soundtracks that I enjoyed in the whole series. Then, having broken down the Matrix, you are free to go in there in real life and discover a spacesuit that gives you all of the cool powers. So you're just like Samus from Metroid at this point, and you have all of the powers that you've grown used to, which in previous missions you couldn't use. You were sapped of powers anytime you went into one of their dreams. But here you have them in real life, and you get into the final boss battle, and unlike previous times where killing enemies gave you health, here you get damaged, you have to go hide for a while, which was really one of the weak points of the game. But eventually you blow up all of these shield generators that are protecting him, and having dodged all his attacks and all of his henchmen and stuff, you finally get to the point where you give him a savage beatdown, and you, in the middle of him telling you that this is not end, you haven't won, you rip his head off with it, like the spine intact dangling down from it, and you're like, I am the leader now. And all of the other guys come out and like, well, what would do you want us to do now, leader? And you're like, well, Earth is destroyed, so what can I do? And like, well, we've got a time machine. You're like, time machine? Why didn't you say so? So you go back in time, and I don't know if you ever rescue your friends who died in the explosion of Earth, but you do spend a lot of time enjoying all of the wonderful things that the past of Earth has to offer. And I really don't know what goes on past that point, but that was just the most awesome game I have ever played, bar none, and I love it to pieces.